Hi class, and welcome to EdVantage. My name is Marie Hunsinger, and today we're going to be talking about race and ethnicity basics. Race and ethnicity is often used interchangeably, but today we're going to talk about what the differences are. So let's start with race. Race is based on distinct characteristics, some biological, that have been assigned some social importance. So typically when we talk about people's racial features, we're talking about their physical appearance. And traits commonly include skin tone, hair texture, facial features, etc. During the 1990s, scientists finished the Human Genome Project, which demonstrated that all humans are 99.9% similar. And so we can't really see genetic racial differences between groups of people, but we can all tell that people look different, and usually that has to do with the part of the world that they come from. Much of the reasons why people look different is because of adaptations due to the environment. For example, if you live closer to the equator and have more sun exposure, you may develop darker skin to protect yourself from the sun. If you live farther away from the equator, you develop lighter skin so you can absorb more vitamin D from the sun. And so all of these reasons why humans look different across the world is more due to environment than inherent biological differences. However, sociologists are still interested in this concept because it has real social consequences and outcomes when we look at things like income inequality, health inequality, criminal justice system, and media representation. So we're going to talk about race as a social construct. Social construct means made up and defined and agreed upon by societies and people. And sociologists say that race is a social construct for a variety of reasons. The way that America has legally defined different races has changed over time. For example, up until the 1930 census, people of Mexican origin were considered white. Also, there was a big debate on whether or not people of Japanese ethnic origin were considered white or not, and the Supreme Court ruled no, based on the common definition of a white man. In the past, some people from Europe were considered not quite white. For example, there was a lot of anti-Irish sentiment when Irish immigrants first started to arrive to the United States. There was many anti-Irish cartoons that depicted this group as disorderly and animal-like and should not be given the same esteem or rights as people from Anglo or Northern European backgrounds. Over time, groups from Greece, Italy, and Eastern Europe have all been considered in the not quite white category, but have assimilated into the white category over time. You're allowed to change your race, for example, on the census, over the course of your life as many times as you want. So this is not a fixed category. So for example, if you want to mark yourself one race in the census in the year 2000, in the census 2010, you can mark yourself a different race depending on how you want to identify. It wasn't until 1960 that people were allowed to choose their own racial category. It used to be that census takers would choose for you. Now you can imagine how many people were misidentified based on the census takers' own perceptions of them. In the year 2000, people were finally allowed to pick more than one racial category on the census. So people who were biracial or multiracial before then had to choose a single box that they felt most closely aligned with their racial identity. Diverse societies categorize race differently. In Brazil, race is more tied to skin color than ancestry. So two siblings from the same family could be considered different races. In the United States, we normally associate race with your heritage. In fact, when they asked Brazilians to identify their race, 136 different skin tone variations were presented to the researchers. In the 1700s, we start to see scientific racism emerge. Carl Linnaeus, a Swedish biologist, was the first to categorize humans into subspecies. And he identified 5 main categories, and he associated these categories with not only physical attributes, but also personality traits and cultural attributes. So you can see on this graph here that Europeans had the most flattering descriptions, and that reflected the white supremacy ideology of that time. White supremacy and the scientific racism was used to justify terrible atrocities all around the world, including slavery and Native American genocide. Now scientific racism has been debunked. As we just talked about, humans are all 99.9% genetically similar, and there's often more genetic variation within a single racial category than between racial categories. Race in the United States. So it may be hard to believe that when the first census was conducted in 1790, there were only 3 racial categories: free white persons, slaves, and other free persons. Today, we have many racial categories for people to choose from, and you can choose multiple boxes, or you can choose other and write in your own race or ethnic origin if you'd like. So we talked about race. Now let's talk about ethnicity. Race is more biological or physical attributes, and ethnicity is more cultural. An ethnic group is a social category of people who share a common culture. For example, a common language or dialect, a common religion, common nationality, common practices, traditions, or norms. And ethnic groups develop because of their unique historical and social experiences. So in the United States, we have seen ethnic enclaves of people, usually recent immigrants, form where they can have their own communities and feel more accepted within their own in-group. So for example, there used to be Chinatown. In fact, there still is Chinatowns across the country. And Little Italy and Little Poland reflect these ethnic enclaves. An example of an ethnicity would be my grandfather, who was a Swedish immigrant. And he brought with him his Swedish language and his practices, such as eating a lot of fish, which personally I was not a fan of growing up, but that is definitely part of the Swedish ethnicity. And also practicing holidays that we don't practice here in the United States, such as May Day. And now I am 3rd generation Swedish American, and we still try to practice some of those traditions, although they have been fading over time. So the current racial and ethnic breakdown of the United States, we can see from this graph that the younger population is much more racially diverse compared to the older population. So here for people under the age of 16, and this was 2010 and 2017, we see that the white population has gone down and the Hispanic population has increased quite a bit. We also see more biracial or mixed race people, and also more Asian Americans compared to the older population. Predictions suggest that this trend line is going to continue and escalate into the future. This graph here shows that by predictions, by 2065, there will be no racial or ethnic group majority. So currently, white people are about 62% of the population, which is the majority of the United States. By 2065, that will go down to approximately 46%, which is below the 50% majority. However, white people will still be the largest racial group in the United States. We project to see a lot more Asian immigration occurring, and also Hispanic immigration is predicted to decrease. Okay, so we hear the terms dominant and minority groups in society, especially in politics. A dominant group is the group in society that have traditionally held the power and the resources. And minority groups are any group of people who are singled out for differential or unequal treatment. Okay, so we're going to talk more about majority and minority groups in the next video. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you for watching, Please click on the EdVantage logo to subscribe and tune in next time as we talk about stereotypes, discrimination, and racism. Thank you.